third day of the 25 Days of Christmas. My name is Shane Reinert, and I'll be reading another Christmas story to you from the book Chicken Soup for the Christian Soul. This is a great story. This is an old story. This is one of the older ones I'll be reading. This is called The Night the Night the Chimes Rang. It is better, much better, to have wisdom and knowledge than gold and silver. Proverbs 16:16. Once, long ago, a magnificent church stood on a high hill in a great city. When lighted up for a special festival, it could be seen for miles around. And yet there was something even more remarkable about this church than its beauty, the strange and wonderful legend of the bells. At the corner of the church was a tall gray tower, and at the top of the tower, so people said, was a chime of the most beautiful bells in the world. But the fact was, no one had heard the bells for many years. Not even Christmas, for it was the custom on Christmas Eve for all the people to bring to the church their offerings to the Christ child. And there had been a long time when a very unusual offering laid on the altar brought glorious music from the chimes far up in the tower. Some said the wind rang them, others said that angels sent them swinging. But lately no offering had been great enough to deserve the music of the chimes. Now, a few miles from the city, in a small village, lived a boy named Pedro and his little brother. They knew very little about the Christmas chimes, but they had heard of the service in the church on Christmas Eve, and they decided to go to see the beautiful celebration. The day before Christmas was bitterly cold, and with a hard white crust on the ground, Pedro and his little brother started out early in the afternoon. Despite the cold, they reached the end of the city by nightfall. They were about to enter one of the great gates when Pedro saw something in the dark on the snow near their path. It was a poor woman who had fallen outside the city. Too sick and tired to get in where she might have found shelter, Pedro tried to rouse her, but she was barely conscious. "It's no use, little brother. You will have to go alone." "Without you?" cried little brother. Pedro nodded slowly. "The woman will freeze to death if no one cares for her. Everyone has probably gone to the church now. But when you come back, be sure to bring something to help her. I will stay here and try to keep her from freezing, and perhaps get her to eat the roll I have in my pocket." "But I can't leave you," cried little brother. "Both of us need not miss the service," said Pedro. "You must see and hear everything twice. Once for you and once for me. I am sure the Christ child knows how I would love to worship him. And if you get a chance, take this silver piece of mine when no one is looking. Lay it down for my offering." In this way he hurried his little brother off to the city and winked hard to keep back the tears of disappointment. The great church was a beautiful place, and that night it had never looked so beautiful. When the organ played and thousands of people sang, the walls shook with the sound. At the close of the service, the procession with the offerings to be laid at the altar. Some brought jewels, some brought heavy baskets of gold. A famous writer laid down a book he had been writing for years. And last of all walked the king of the country, hoping with all the rest to win for himself the chime of the Christmas bells. A great murmur went through the crowd as the king took from his head his royal crown and set it with the precious stones and laid it on the altar. "Surely," everyone said, "we will hear the bells now." But the cold wind was all that they heard in the tower. The procession was over, and the choir began the closing hymn. Suddenly the organist stopped playing. The singing ceased. Not a sound could be heard from anyone in the church. As all the people strained their ears to listen, there came softly, but distinctly, the sound of the chimes of the tower. So far away and yet so clear. Music seemed so much sweeter than anything ever heard before. Then they all stood up together, looked at the altar to see what a great gift had awakened the long, silent bells. But all they saw was the childish figure of Pedro's little brother, who had crept softly down the aisle when no one was looking and laid Pedro's little piece of silver on the altar. Raymond MacDonald Alden. Wow, I mean, that's just a great story, and it tells you not just it's not the size of the gift, but sometimes it's how little you have to give. And if you give everything that you have, look at the difference it can make. Look at the miracle that happened with the wind and the chime and the bells. It's a beautiful, wonderful story. That wraps up story number 3 on day 3 of the 25 Days of Christmas. I'm Shane Reiner. Please come back and tune in tomorrow for story 4 on day 4 of our 25 Days of Christmas. Thank you.